Nostalgia is Killing Cinema. An essay by Justin C. Bartlett, written on February 8th, 2016. This is from the Dime Store Cinema WordPress blog. Let's talk movies. We all love movies, right? I mean, what's not to like? They are the most accessible form of storytelling. They simultaneously reflect and shape culture. They combine wish fulfillment, escapism, and pertinent social commentary. Did you know, though, that as I am writing this, an insidious cultural phenomena is wrapping its cold, lifeless, zombie like fingers around the throat of this storytelling medium I hold most dear? Death, thy name is nostalgia. Nostalgia is a pleasure and or sadness that is caused by remembering something from the past and wishing that you could experience it again, or a wistful or excessively sentimental yearning for a return to or of some past period. How can evocation of a pleasant feeling or remembrance of personality shaping events be a bad thing? Nostalgia in and of itself is not evil, but it has been wielded and twisted to manipulate a general audience. Nostalgia is the driving force behind most of the money-making features being put out. Studios have latched on to this idea. They are selling us our own feelings and memories and childhood. In an industry that seeks to use minimal effort to gain maximum return, nostalgia has become the Midas touch. It has effectively lowered the bar for filmmaking. All a movie has to do is evoke nostalgia competently, and we will rave about it being the best movie of the year because it reminds us of that one time when we were kids and we saw that one movie we thought was the best thing ever. We are desperately grasping for our youth. We want the majesty and awe we experienced before the cynicism of adulthood. Bad movies, however, won't bring your favorite summer back, or your first movie theater kiss, or the first time seeing Indiana Jones or Luke Skywalker or Han Solo. Those were, if you're like me, important moments in life. Not just fond memories, but life-changing events that had profound impact. The first movie my parents took me to see was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I still vaguely recall the old knight saying, "He chose poorly." Much more vividly, though, I remember the characters riding off into the sunset, symbolizing not only the end of the movie, but the end of the franchise. I was young then. I didn't understand nuance, but even at that age, I understood the finality of that closing moment. I knew, based on that one scene, any attempt to make a sequel would be disastrous. There are some amazing sequels: Die Hard with a Vengeance, The Empire Strikes Back, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and the aforementioned Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I'm not opposed to sequels. One of my favorite films, The Tale of Zatoichi, made in 1962, has many sequels. By 1989, there were 26 movies in the series, and I love each and every one of them. I am opposed, however, to sequels that try to resurrect the past. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull tried to bring Indiana Jones back from the sunset he already rode off into. It ruined the end to the series. Even if the movie had been good, which it was not, it still would have been guilty of weakening a perfect conclusion. Despite the ideal end note, the name Indiana Jones was plastered on a subpar movie to sell tickets. And we fell for it because we love that character. Our love overpowered our better judgment. The script never should have been considered, and it wouldn't have been if it was a standalone film. Iconic names empower studios to proceed with bad ideas. Star Wars: The Force Awakens. This movie, this damn movie, I hate that I loved this movie after watching it. Its trailer made my inner child cry out of my adult eye holes because he was so excited. There were 3 parts during the movie that had the same effect. They got the visuals right, they got the tone right, they had every fanboy drooling. It felt like Star Wars. We felt something again. We had a glimpse. It was the closest we will ever come to feeling like a kid again. But let's face it, it wasn't a good movie. We loved it, all of us, but it wasn't a good movie. It tricked us like Pizza Hut tricked us into thinking it serves good pizza. It relied so heavily on the audience feeling something familiar, it didn't even bother trying to tell its own story. Chris Stuckman, a film critic I respect, posited that people are critiquing The Force Awakens too harshly because it's a Star Wars film. He pointed out that all of the Indiana Jones movies are the same, following the same beats and structure. This was presented to excuse the similarity between The Force Awakens and A New Hope. I thought about this for a moment. Ultimately, I reject the premise and came to the opposite conclusion. If Indiana Jones would have searched for a piece of a destroyed ark in the Temple of Doom and then a mountain-sized ark in The Last Crusade, people would have been furious. In the original Star Wars trilogy, when we met the protagonist, Luke was an annoying little boy with plans to join the Empire. Han was a murderer, Leia was a damsel in distress, and Ben Kenobi was a creepy old man. They were compelling because they became something. They were all presented as having the potential for both good and evil, and their choices to act as heroes made us love them. It was a journey that was compelling. In The Force Awakens, Poe started out as a badass hero. Finn was a sensitive, funny man who didn't want to murder anyone. Rey was a strong, likable woman, and Han was a slightly cantankerous old man with a heart of gold. It was as if the writers took the term hero's journey to mean change location, as if the journey was a literal one. Moving a character from one set to another does not develop said character. It just makes him or her react to a new stimulus. The only character who came close to having a personal arc was Kylo Ren. I have a feeling, though, that the sole purpose of his design was to be everything Anakin Skywalker was supposed to be in the prequels. If we weren't so emotionally invested in this universe and episodes 1, 2, and 3 didn't exist, I dare say most of us would have found the film to be insufferable. We loved it at the time, though. Good cinema isn't necessary having felt something so lovely. Even the best of the recent nostalgic sequels, Mad Max Fury Road, suffers from concept over substance. What's great about this movie, however, is that it is a love letter to 80s and 90s action films. All of Tarantino's films are a love letter to specific genres. He gets accused of being derivative for it. The big difference, though, is Tarantino also writes good stories and dynamic characters and dialogue. Regardless, there is a difference between using nostalgia to sell a picture and using genre to frame a picture. George Miller made a movie that felt like it was made during the golden age of action cinema. It was too dissimilar to be considered a true sequel, but too similar to be separate from the series. It blurred the line, really. I think this is what one has to do when two films in a series are separated by more than a decade. I say this is the best of the recent nostalgic sequels because it's not pandering. It doesn't try to sell the audience its feelings. It's honest and it's beautiful. It's also dumb. Sometimes that's all anyone wants, though, something dumb and beautiful. Avengers, Justice League, X-Men, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Transformers. What do all of these have in common? They are, or will be, multi-billion-dollar franchises. Also, all based on characters we loved as children. It's interesting culturally. All of these characters are so prevalent, the movies made depicting them don't need to follow the usual rules of adaptation. The filmmakers forego development for reference. That is, it seems more important that the movies have familiar set pieces than dynamic, interesting stories. The only of these films that have integrated both into a script are Iron Man, The Dark Knight, and Logan. It's no surprise that these are also the best in their respective series. There is so much sameness in all of this. Everything is starting to run together. Everything is starting to congeal into this dull, opaque mass. We are perpetuating it, though. Those billions of dollars I mentioned earlier, those are our dollars. We're essentially buying tickets to the same movie over and over again. I suppose that's fine. Familiarity is comforting. It's the equivalent of fast food, really. Our attachment to the characters keeps us coming back. The studios just paint by numbers. but that flat, two-dimensional character was represented in a comic or cartoon series we loved as children, so we gotta watch the movies. Bad movies have always existed. The Fat Spy from 1966, Frogs from 1972, Jaws: The Revenge from 1987, Biodome from 1996, all undeniably terrible. Crap is everywhere. The problem with nostalgia is that it tricks us into thinking mediocre or bad films are good or even great. Being reminded of a better time or even just another time is great. I wouldn't want to ruin that for anyone, but we, as consumers, really need to start calling these studios out for spoon-feeding us crap from our childhood. We need to start demanding better stories. We need to start putting our money toward greatness instead of mediocrity. We need great stories. Stories that inspire and convict us. Stories that guide and influence us. Stories that help shape a better society. A society of thought, fun, and humanity.